So, all right. So let's talk about Cagney.
Great.
You wrote, you produced, you starred in, you secured the funding for the Cagney musical. I imagine that's a little bit like running a startup, like we just talked about.
For sure.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Maybe a learning moment that you could share with leaders or entrepreneurs that you learned in that whole process?
Yeah, the one thing I would offer relative to that question is, so for me, it was a dream that started in acting school. I had a teacher who said, you remind me of Jimmy Cagney, you kind of look like him, you're built like him. I know you're sneaking out to tap dance on the side, because it was a straight acting school like Shakespeare and all the whole thing. He said, I know you like to tap dance. You should watch James Cagney films. You'd like him. I started watching them. Instantly, I felt connected. I'm like, oh my gosh, I do look like him. So this dream started. And then I read a book about his life and how he went through the world, and he lived his life in a way that warranted having a musical written about his life. He stuck up for the little guy, one of the founding members of the Screen Actors Guild, when actors were being, abused by the studios, no matter how, he was making millions of dollars for the studio and getting $350 a week, and walked out on his contract, and then came back and for everyone made a new deal. Supported the defense of the Scottsboro boys way back when, because they weren't getting a proper defense, and he paid money to help them get a proper defense, etc. Anyway, just who he was. I got fired up about it. Created a show about his life, collaborated with a couple other people that helped me, do it. And when I went through lots of stages, did it in Florida first in 2009, a couple productions the next year, got busy on Broadway, did a reading at a little theater in New York, and they said, we would do it and help you develop it here in this basement in New York, but you have to raise $129,000 yourself. And none of my collaborators were interested in any of the business side of things. And so I'd been the one pushing the boulder up the hill for 20 years at this point. And I said, okay, let's do this thing. And I had a friend who was a producer who I said, I need a little advice on how to do this. And what I learned through that, and what didn't come easily to me, but in talking to my friend Sugi Lad, who's one of the co-lead producers of a musical that just won the Tony, The Outsiders. And I say that only because she was in the early stages then, but she was a business person who loved the theater. And she said, you just have to share your story and your passion with people, and know whether it's for them or not, they're not going to mind you. They're not going to mind hearing about it. Mm-hmm. And so when I was scared to pick up the phone, there were a few people. I had 10 investors and raised $129,000. Some of them were family members. Some of them were friends, and some of them were friends of friends that I didn't know. And that was hard to pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to tell you about this thing I'm developing. I have an opportunity to do it in New York, and it's an investment, and it's theater. So you know what kind of investment that is. You're kind of rolling the dice. Mm-hmm. But I just shared my story and my passion and my dream. And not one of them, not everybody invested that I talked to, but not one of them felt bad about it. They all wished me well. And then most people that I talked to got on board in some way or another. And so just being able to make that call and share your passion and your dream, you have to overcome the resistance inside to do it. If I had just succumbed to the resistance, Cagney would never have happened in that little theater. We would have never found our commercial producer, had a 15-month off-Broadway hit in New York, and now be headed towards a Broadway theater. Next year, we're right in line to get a Broadway theater, and that will be, I already feel like doing it in New York for 15 months was what I wanted, but that would be like just the multiple cherries on top of the Sunday. So, yeah, make the call is what I would say, and tell people about your passion. They won't mind. If it's for them, great. If it's not, great.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Share your vision.
Yeah.
Not only having the vision, but sharing it.